My friend recently said to me, "Ain't no way I want to live my life like the guys in the Bible." And I was like, ever heard of the top G, King Solomon? Solomon had a fleet of hypercars, his army was employed with the newest joint light tactical vehicles of the time, and he was making bank, selling the leftover chariots to Syrian kings to the point that silver became as common as stone. He had 700 wives and 300 concubines, among them the daughter of the pharaoh. His diplomatic skills led Israel to expand to a size never seen before, and the royalty all over the world traveled to hear his TED Talks. So he was pretty much the definition of a top G, excelling at everything, and he was also living the life of a top G. The reason for this prosperity was his immense wisdom. Pretty early on in his reign, God appeared to him in a dream and said to him, "Ask for whatever you want me to give you." Normies would have asked for infinite wishes, but Solomon thanked God for the blessings he had given his father David and said that he's a bottom G right now. But he wants a discerning heart to govern God's people, and God gave him wisdom, and Solomon applied it to all parts of his life. He became an expert in the natural sciences, read all the wisdom books from Egypt he could get his hands on, and spoke 3,000 proverbs. Now there's a difference between knowledge and wisdom. You may know how to do small talk, but can you actually socialize? Knowledge is being able to recite every Monopoly rule, but wisdom is knowing when to break a rule and let your cousin Kyle win. And while Solomon had to go through his own fair share of succession struggles, attaining the position of king, he mostly managed to do so through his own wisdom. And the story of Solomon the top G could have honestly ended here. There's just this teeny tiny issue of him worshipping the foreign gods of his 1,000 wives on the side. And now, before he's about to die, he writes this book called Ecclesiastes that should contain all of his life's purpose. He has basically lived his life in wisdom and luxury, establishing Israel as a powerhouse of a nation. But he starts the book with,
"Vanity of vanities, all is vanity."
and the word vanity literally translates to smoke. So you can still see it, but it disperses as soon as you try to grab it. And he starts off going through everything that he initially thought held a meaning. What about money? He's the richest person on the world, but
When goods increase, they increase who eat them. And what advantage has their owner but to see them with his eyes? Sweet is the sleep of a laborer, whether he eats little or much, but the full stomach of the rich will not let him sleep.
what about maximizing the joy in life, following the Greek ideas of stoicism or utilitarianism?
I said in my heart, "Come now, I will test you with pleasure, enjoy yourself." But behold, this also was vanity.
What about all the knowledge he has amassed? That must be worth something, right?
For in much wisdom is much vexation, and he who increases knowledge increases sorrow. What is crooked cannot be made straight, and what is lacking cannot be counted.
But Solomon achieved a lot in life and changed the world, right?
So I became great and surpassed all who were before me in Jerusalem. Then I considered all that my hands had done, and the toil I had expended in doing it, and behold, all was vanity and a striving after wind, and there was nothing to be gained under the sun.
What about building a legacy that lasts for hundreds of generations?
I hated all my toil in which I toil under the sun, seeing that I must leave it to the man who will come after me, and who knows whether he will be wise or a fool. This also is vanity.
How prophetic is that statement from Solomon, as his incompetent son proceeded to run Israel into the ground, and the kingdom split, leading to bloody internal feuds that lasted for ages. And it's not like Solomon has succumbed to a rare disease that creates clinical depression close to his death. His wisdom and knowledge over his life just logically leads to this conclusion. And he has basically 3 core pillars that support his philosophy. Pillar number 1 would be that shit happens to everyone.
It is the same for all, since the same event happens to the righteous and the wicked, to the good and the evil, to the clean and the unclean, to him who sacrifices and him who does not sacrifice.
And included in that shit that happens to everyone is death.
But he who is joined with all the living has hope. For a living dog is better than a dead lion. For the living know that they will die, but the dead know nothing, and they have no more reward, for the memory of them is forgotten.
Their name might not be forgotten after hundreds, thousands, or tens of thousands of years, but who will remember your name 1,000,000 years from now? Everything you have built up on this earth, everything you stand for will not exist. Pillar number 2 of Solomon's philosophy is that there's nothing new on earth. Medieval town criers are now influencers. Crocs are just pimped up Danish clogs. And ancient Greece already had smart home automatically opening doors figured out.
All streams run to the sea, but the sea is not full, and there is nothing new under the sun. Is there a thing of which it is said, "See, this is new, it has been already in the ages before us"?
The last, but not the least of the pillars of Solomon's philosophy is that God exists, but there's no way you can understand him. Trying to seek God is vanity, because there's no way you can find out anything substantial about the infinite God as a finite being.
As you do not know the way the spirit comes to the bones in the womb of a woman with child, so you do not know the work of God, who makes everything. However much man may toil in seeking, he will not find it out.
The issue now is that grieving that everything is vanity is now also vanity. So the only thing that is left is enjoyment of the moment and death. If we contrast Solomon's final words with the words of Solomon's father David, who was a man after God's heart, he says,
"I have been young and now am old, yet I have not seen the righteous forsaken or his children begging for bread."
It initially seems pretty naive to say that you have not seen the children of the righteous begging for bread, because common sense tells us that this must have happened at some point. But in comparison to the sort of agnostic views of Solomon, it is an expression of faith in the sense that the Lord will be with you in all things.
It is the Lord who goes before you. He will be with you, he will not leave you or forsake you. Do not fear or be dismayed.
This is the same reason that Paul can say that all things work together for good. Both David and Solomon were chosen by God early on, experienced God's favor in similar ways. Both were poets, both were builders. But from the beginning, David had his eyes set on God, while Solomon was trapped under the sun. Both had the calling and blessing of God, but only one of them answered the calling, and one of them only enjoyed the blessing. And it was not like David didn't ask for worldly things of God, like the destruction of his enemies in basically all of his psalms. But when given the seemingly godly, once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to take the life of his biggest enemy, Saul, he listened to the Lord's voice and spared him.
The Lord forbid that I should do this thing to my Lord, the Lord's anointed, to put out my hand against him, seeing he is the Lord's anointed.
Why? Because while there were so many things he would ask of God, there's only one thing that he would chase after.
One thing have I asked of the Lord, that will I seek after, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to gaze upon the beauty of the Lord, and to inquire in his temple.
Be David, not Solomon.